In today's episode, we have a special guest, Melissa Felix. She is both a psychic and medical medium. She shares with us some of her experiences, how she supports clients, and her self-love relationship, because after all, it is love season. Welcome to another episode of Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. We are your hosts, Christy Palermo and Jennifer Hobson. We are excited to introduce to you and to have on our podcast today, Melissa Felix with us. I'll speak for Christy on this. I always enjoy having guests, especially people that do things that we might not do. That comes into the skeptical part of this conversation. A lot of things I am gung-ho on, and some things I don't understand. So maybe I'm a little bit skeptical of them. And some of the things that Melissa does, they're really intriguing to me. So I'm really excited to learn more about you, more about what you do, and because we are heading into love season, more about love, self-relationships, self-love, all the things. I'm going to give myself a hug physically right now. That's what it's making me think of. So before we even kick off this conversation, Melissa, we want to ask you to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do to our listeners.
So my name is Melissa Felix. I'm a psychic medium. Work for myself now. I was in the medical field for 17 years as an oral surgeon assistant. I left during COVID. I didn't get vaccinated, so I stayed home. And then I was just doing my readings from home. And then I said, imagine if I could just do my readings and focus on that. How big can this grow? Will it be enough for me? But I kind of just tried to let go of the financial aspect of it and just work on it as a whole. And I also started going back to school because I figured that the psychology aspect of the schooling that I wanted to continue into was going to help me on this field, because not only do I do readings, but I'm also a healer.
That's awesome. So that's a lot. That's a lot to have in a short amount of time. I mean, I feel like sometimes we say, during COVID, and in a way it feels like it was 10 years ago, but in reality it was barely 4 years ago. And to have
people talk about it, I'm like,
right? It was really only 4 years ago to have that extreme transition in your life from being in the medical field full time to saying, you know what, I don't agree with what's currently going on in that aspect, and it just doesn't align with what's important to me. So I'm going to leave and do this thing that I've been doing. So I have to ask, how long, while you were in that other field, how long have you had that connection to psychic reading? What does that look like for you?
So I've always been able to connect with spirit since I was a kid. I grew up across the street from the cemetery. So I spent like my life learning how to ride a bike there, roller skating there, going for walks there every day. I thought everybody connected with spirit, and I thought it was very normal that I had conversations with them. I didn't think that there was anybody who wasn't doing that. But then, you get older and then you realize your friends aren't talking about it. So then you don't talk about it. And then it kind of gets like pushed down, like, we're talking about boys now. And so I just didn't really connect with it for a long time. And then in 2009, I seen a medium that told me some like really like wow moment things. And I was like, oh my God. And then she finished with, your grandfather says he talks to you all the time and that you connect too. And then I was like, oh my God. So what I think is real. And this has been going on.
You're like, it's not just the voice in my head. That's a real person.
I did think that there was something wrong. And if I was ever going to tell anybody that, then I would probably get, committed. My family is kind of crazy. So I was like, add that to the list of things I probably inherited,
Gotcha.
But it wasn't. So after that, I kind of went through like, they say like your healing journey. So I kind of went through where I started withdrawing from some people and then gravitating towards like another crowd of people. I started reading in 2013 publicly, like doing readings for people on the phone, or if they'd come I got divorced in 2014. So all of that came to like a stop because, I was going through the divorce and moving and all that. When I got situated in, the life I have now, that's when COVID happened in like 2019. And then that's where I brought them in to like really, really doing them. I got my Reiki certification in 2016. So that started the healing process where I was doing the healing stuff.
Yeah.
But when COVID happened and I decided to not get the vaccine, my boss literally gave me like 6 days to decide. He was like, sign the paper, get the vaccine, or don't come back. And I was like, I don't even know like what to do because I just didn't even know too much about it at all.
Yeah.
And then, like, I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. I have 3 kids, I have to make sure that I'm here for them. And I just was too afraid at that time.
That's a
Because I
lot.
what to do. And so I was like, I'm just going to stay home and somebody else will hire me eventually, but it kept happening where we still weren't going back to normal life. And then
Yeah.
I started things online.
That's so crazy. So it's just a lot, right? And to harp into that personal decision you made, but anything, regardless of what it was, but being told by
Yeah.
someone else that you have to make a decision about your life and you're given 6 days, you're like, I don't even have all the information. And if you seem to be a very intuitive person, right? You're intuitive to other energy, other people. It's hard to go, you know what, I'm okay with this. So if you're intuitive to that, you're also intuitive to how you feel about that. And I think that's at the heart of your journey and self-love. I have to ask before we get into any other questions, what do you remember as your first kind of experience with your ability?
So like I said, I always had it when I was a kid, and I remember having conversations in my head with like spirit at the graveyard because my grandmother was the last of 13 kids. So she would go and water all the graves of all the people she knew and all her friends. So that stuff I remember, but since I had like not been tapping into it, it was right after no, it was actually before when I was still married. So it was probably from 2009 to 2012, around there, where I was driving and I saw a kid that I went to high school with, and he came to me like in a big visual. Like I saw his face, and he said that he needed me to reach out to his girlfriend that he was with when he passed and just tell her that he loves her. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Why would this happen to me? For one, she's going to think I'm weird. Why did that happen to me? It kind of asked
Wow.
thoughts of like what I needed to do there. Was I going to deliver that message and help him out, or was I just going to be nervous of what people thought?
So wait, what did you do? I need to know.
So I did. I messaged her. I told her that what I was about to say, might be alarming. Just read this when she has time and she's like alone.
Yep.
And she received it like so great. She was so supportive. She was so happy, and she wanted to meet with me.
That's crazy. And I mean, Christy knows I'm
Wow.
pretty skeptical, and I'm like, no, but when you're saying it, I think Christy, we're both like goosebumps, and that it's hard to go, okay, I have this ability, and it's one thing. I believe it to be true. That doesn't mean other people will believe it to be true. And I'm gonna put myself out there and share that I saw your boyfriend that has passed for no clear reason.
Big believer on like your beliefs are yours and that's okay. And like everyone has their own beliefs and they're all okay. But like I don't really enforce them or like talk about them, because if somebody wants
Sure.
to welcome it, but I don't really like push it. But she was so supportive. I'm so glad that was my first experience because I might have just bottled that up and then never talked again. But she was so supportive. She wanted to meet up. She also wanted to see the medium that I had met a few years back that had changed my life because I was still like not able to do a whole reading, but I could give her a message. And more of my message was that he was coming to her daughter in the bathtub. And so she exactly what I was talking about. Her daughter was talking to someone in the bathtub. So that was really, a good part of it too, because I was happy that I got that message to her.
Wow, I like my mind is kind of blown right now because I also just don't know much about what you do. So hearing this story just is like I'm trying to imagine being that girl and getting a message like that and how
And she
comforting it must be.
and 2 kids with him, a happy family. So I didn't want to like, get her
Yeah,
all either, but she was very happy to hear this.
that's
I
awesome.
imagine it being so comforting.
Yeah, he was definitely sending her his blessings for her 2 kids, and that he was watching over all of them as a whole and sending them love. So that was a good part.
Oh,
So that seems really powerful what you do. It seems a lot of times, and maybe it's not all the time, that you're able to provide people maybe with something they've been looking for. So, how do you feel your experience in the past few years and then your personal experience through your life and identifying whether or not those things were true to you and to believe them? How are you serving people now?
Pretty much the same thing. But about me is that I'm always honest. So if spirit is telling me like the relationship you're in is there's a lot of conflict and it's not, serving your highest good, or it's just not good for your health right now, I'm definitely going to let you know. It doesn't mean that I'm judging or telling you what to do, but I do deliver the message exactly how it comes from them. And some people aren't ready to hear it yet, and I have never had anybody that has left my space that's been angry or upset. They're usually like, thank you so much, I needed to hear that. So I think at first they're like, no, I have a very happy marriage or whatnot, and I'm like, that's fine, I'm sure you do, but they're just saying this part of it needs to be worked on, or this has gotten to be too much, and now you're kind of manifesting some physical ailments, because of the energy that you're surrounding yourself in, every day.
For sure. I mean, it's like stress, right? The more stress we're surrounded with, it shows up in other ways. Like, oh, it's so crazy that I've been stressed for the last 10 years and now I have kidney disease. Like, and it's not always the case, but there are a lot of cases. So I think what's interesting, so, and for our listeners, the way that Melissa and I met is actually through local networking and through a group called Referrals from the Heart. And we've met a couple of other times, and you always kind of feel people's energy and you definitely have a positive energy around you. And I found it super interesting. And what you had shared is, you do psychic readings. And then the thing that I was like trying to wrap my head around was this medical mediumship. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you approach that, maybe even with yourself and with your clients.
So the psychic readings, that's just like connecting with spirit and giving messages about that. My healing sessions, if somebody's coming in for a healing, um, sometimes it's either driven from emotional or physical. So sometimes they're coming to me because they're in physical pain, or sometimes they're coming because they're emotionally in pain. They want relief, either way. So for somebody who's coming in for emotional stuff, I just start the session with connecting to their inner child, their self, from like when they were young, like 4 or 5 years old is usually when trauma starts, surprisingly. So if you've had like a divorce, or your parents got separated, or you guys moved, or anything that was pretty traumatic still is on your soul, like imprinted. You might not think about it every day, you definitely don't, but it's still there in just a small little increment. So if something else happens, like maybe you get divorced, that could be re-triggered and all brought back, and all of the good stuff that comes with it, which then manifests. If somebody's coming to me for a physical pain, they might say, oh, my right hip and my right leg has been giving me a hard time. And that is a really big red flag to me, because your right side is your male and your female is the left side of you. So for me, it's a male in your life that is preventing you from moving. You're preventing yourself from moving forward with a male in your life. So whether that's a relationship, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's your son, your oldest son. He's struggling with something, addiction, and you're having a hard time, kind of stopping the enabling that you're doing. Whatever it is, it manifests in your hip, because that's exactly where moving forward manifests. And then eventually it gets worse, going down the leg, into the foot.
That's, I mean, I find that super interesting, right? Because I mean, I personally know, there's talk about chakras and, there's certain points for trigger points. And we've talked about EFT tapping here with Dr. Tara Doyle. And there's all these different things and energy work. And, you want to have that belief in that. And sometimes you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. And until
Right.
you personally experience it. Exactly. And then, so let me ask you, if you have a client that comes here, are a lot of your clients kind of one and done, or how do you help them if you have identified their block? How do you help them get past it?
So usually if you are already manifesting one physical ailment, there's probably more, because that means that it's gone for a long time, that it's actually now manifesting, right? So usually you have more. So I only can work on so much in that hour that we have. So I usually just take it a step at a time and just focus on that one, because the person needs to, they're hearing something, maybe they didn't want it, like I said, they didn't want to talk about, or they didn't want to realize that was going on. So they kind of need to sit with themselves, think about what happened, what we talked about today, how they're going to handle it moving forward, and then applying the things that they need to do. So your hips really do store so many emotions. And I always tell everybody about the, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but the somatic exercises.
Yeah.
They help so much because we store so much. And so many of my female clients have told me that even in an intimate situation where their legs are like open, or they're doing something, that they feel very vulnerable and very emotional. And that's because they need to be released.
Yeah.
So
says every female that's ever had to go to a gynecologist appointment in their entire life.
right.
Right? Talk about vulnerable. I feel exposed in more than one way. And now I found out it's also spiritually.
Right. And like yoga, and you're doing some of the poses and you're like, oh my God, I feel like emotional, or I feel like heavy right now. It's releasing. Your body is so amazing. It's almost mind blowing every time. I've never been wrong on the physical ailment matching the emotional. So meaning every physical ailment that I've ever found on somebody, the emotional element has always matched. They have always said, yes, oh my God, yes, that just happened.
And you don't feel like it's ever leading the witness.
No, so I don't tell them what this conversation I'm having in my head.
Gotcha.
Who's the male in your life that you've been having a problem moving forward with? And they're like, well, nobody, again, my marriage is great. And then, well, my boss, like, he wants to hire someone else, and I feel like I don't really belong there anymore. And I'm like, yeah. That's the male in your life. So people at your work are just as close to your spouse or your kids. So they're all gonna play that part. So relationships doesn't mean just, the husband or wife.
Yeah, I think Christy and I have talked about that before, right? I think so many times we think the word relationship and we just think about our significant other, but you have friendships, and friendships you have to pour just as much energy into it. And then, you have all these other relationships. For many people that are working a traditional 9 to 5, you are spending immense amount of time, more sometimes than with your significant other. So it's great to identify that. So how, Melissa, what you do and how you approach it, how do you then take that and serve either yourself or people with their relationship with themselves?
So starting off with that's kind of like back to the basics, the relationship with yourself. So after we handle all of those things going on, I'm always kind of encouraging them to go back to the self-love, going back to pretty much every relationship in your life. If it's not serving your goals moving forward, it really shouldn't be. So if your boss, everything he's saying is not aligning with you and it's not the same goals, then he's really not fitting where you're moving, right? So then we have to address what we're going to do about that. And that can be scary for some people. And so I totally get that. So I'm always kind of taking my time with people too, with these things. And the same thing with the spouse, if your spouse is not tending to the kids. He's not a hands-on dad, and that really just is not aligning with your future goals. You need to go back to having a conversation with him, maybe counseling on how he can be a better parent with you on the same, being on your level, I guess you would say. I always take everything very slowly because the relationships you have with people are most of the time like relationships you've had for 20 plus years. I don't encourage people to go quit their job or go get divorced. I take everything very, and I think you're going to realize it on your own without me telling you at all.
Yeah.
I just want people to always look at their relationships as serving their purpose, like where they're going, it should align. If it's not going out to eat with your girlfriends and everybody's gossiping and you're like, you feel heavy when you leave, that's not aligning with like your goal tonight. Your goal was to have a good time with your friends, feel better, go home feeling better, not going home feeling heavier. So
I think, and if you're listening to this episode and you haven't listened to last week's episode, we talked about community and how a lot of times in our life, there are, like you said, those long relationships, and maybe they've been a part of your life for 20 plus years. And they're still identifying whether or not those relationships and those communities that you've built are in alignment with what's important to you and your purpose. And that sometimes you can voice that to those people and hope that they jump on board and they want to grow with you. Or sometimes you just need to identify that this isn't serving me anymore. And it's actually not serving them either because we're not in the same place. And it's time for me to evolve and it's time for me to build new relationships and new community. And that can be really hard. And I'm usually of the school of like, sometimes you need some tough love. Not that that means, oh, hey, you have a shitty relationship, go get divorced. Because I don't know everything in your life. But you do need to take some time to take stock of what is happening. There's so many times we just stay, I've had friendships that they have ended. And we've said this before. They were in my life for a reason, but it didn't mean that they get to be in my life forever.
right.
And that sometimes that's really hard. Some people stick to people just because, well, we've been friends since first grade. That's awesome.
Tell them you can be friends forever, right? But that doesn't mean you have to like hang out once or hang out every week, or they have to even come to your house, right? So I can be friends with you and me and you can connect every once in a while, and I hold you at a very high place in my life. But we don't have to talk all the time. So I kind of tell people to kind of put that distance when you feel like they're not aligning. Either you're going to come back together or you're kind of going to grow, and that's fine too. I always, that saying, like people in your life for a certain season. So when you were 19, you attracted that friend because that's where you were at when you were 19. And now you're 40 and that's not where you're at. So would they really be even in, if they were still in alignment, I would say you're probably living a very a life that maybe isn't fitting you, because you should be growing out of friends and relationships all the time.
Yeah. Well, I think Christy and our relationship is kind of a perfect example, right? We've known each other since, I don't know, like 11 years old or whatever. And we were really, really close. And then life evolved. We didn't stop being friends, but we had to put our time in different places. And then we evolved into different people and we came back together. And, I think that's okay too, right? I think something people think, or there's some people that, I see this all the time online. Well, I'm only going to give you the energy that you give me. And that's just that, you know what, then that relationship's not serving you anymore. It's okay to let it go, but you have to go back to where are you putting your time and who are you surrounding yourself with is a huge part of identifying and treating yourself. That's self-love at its finest.
I'm a big believer on you should always be you. So if I check in with you 3 times a week and you don't check in with me, that's irrelevant, because that's not who you are, and that's okay. So I accept you for you, and you're not a person to check in, but I am. So that's me. The energy I put out is always going to be 100% of how I feel that what I want to put out. And how you put your energy out is how you put your energy out. I'm not matching you. I'm always going to keep mine high. You're going to come up to rise and meet mine, or you're going to fall back.
I love that. I think that's a great thing for everybody listening, just to take that in and remind ourselves that, right, like we're not in control of other people's actions, energy.
She doesn't check in with me. Maybe she buys me dinner and she feels like that's how she's giving me love. And I'm who am I to say that that's not love for her? Because that's just how she is.
Yeah.
I'm the that likes to text and say, hey, I was thinking of you, but not many people do that to me at all. That doesn't cross my mind. It used to. I used to people or give that same energy because that's what people would say, like, oh, if she's not doing it to me, I'm not doing it for her. And it's like, no, we're not doing this. We're putting our energy, we're gonna mark that bar really high.
Yeah.
And guys to meet it or they fall back. Maybe you're the brightest light in their life.
Yeah, I think it's hard to go, oh, in this relationship, I'm basing how you contribute to this relationship based on how I contribute. That it's not really fair, and that's kind of like, oh, it's almost the figurative. I bought dinner, so now you buy dinner. Now I buy dinner, and I think it even goes back to we've talked about this before, but love languages. You have to know how someone shows love. I'm very act of service. Chrissy, in my past, she's been a gift giver, right? I'm not necessarily good at that. I have all the great ideas and then I don't go through on them. Mine is act of service, right? Mine is showing up, doing something for you. And, mine is definitely not physical touch. Somebody else's might be. And you need to go, okay, how do I serve myself and my relationships the best? Identify what truly how you show love and be okay if the person that you want to spend time with, that might not be how they reciprocate. And that's okay.
That's a huge thing. You definitely have to accept how people are. So same with like different people's husbands. Maybe you don't come home to flowers, but maybe your husband picked the kids up from school and he thought that was huge. He thought that was a huge help to you because he knows how busy you are.
Mm-hmm.
Always have to accept people for who they are. And I think you can really pull their goods from like really looking at them as a whole. Like look at the things that they do for you. It doesn't always look how you want it. And so we have to lose control of that too. Like there's certain women that'll say like, well, my husband doesn't cook. And it's like, well, yeah, he doesn't cook, but maybe he can go to the grocery store and grab the stuff for you. Maybe he cleans after. Maybe that's how it puts in.
I think it comes back to communication too, right? There are the things you want people to do, but if you haven't been clear on your wants, desires, and expectations, it's hard for people to meet them.
Yes. Not everybody's psychic.
Right? Not everyone is psychic.
Oh, and some people are so busy and they're in their head with their own thoughts. They don't even realize. I have so many times that like a mother and daughter comes for a reading and she's like, my mom does this and my mom does that. Wait until you meet her. And then the mom comes in with a whole nother version of their relationship. And I'm like, yeah, she's so unaware that her daughter has any of these, complaints. Because she probably hasn't told her. She just thinks her mom should know with her vision.
Yeah. Yeah. We only see what's in our purview, right? We're not taking in what other people. Well, so then from here, Melissa, what tips do you have for people on how they can improve their own self-love relationship?
So the first thing that you have to do is you have to believe that you are deserving of healthy relationships, that you are deserving of love, you're deserving of happiness. If you do not have like the foundation of what you're deserving of, it's probably going to be a very difficult ride from there. I'll see people on Facebook that write things like, oh, karma is, coming for you, or what you put out, that doesn't work at all. I know like the most giving people in the world that totally get shit on, that are always sad and depressed and they're always alone. And they're the most giving people in the world. Why is that? Because somewhere along the line, someone told them that they don't deserve it, that they're not deserving of love, that they don't deserve to be happy, that they don't deserve to be financially blessed. And so they're carrying this belief system dormant, like I said, from a long time ago. It could have been, your mom when you were a kid that was like, you're never going to amount to nothing. And that belief is still in there. And as a healer, that's where I start using the theta, because that works on old programming and things that are in your subconscious that you're not aware of.
I love that. I love that you're talking about self-worth as a huge part of
if you else is going to, right? So it doesn't matter what you're putting out. If you don't believe it, it's not coming back to you.
And I also love that a lot of what you do too is based on, as you mentioned before, is someone's where they're headed, like the goal that they're headed, the direction they're headed in, and so what aligns with that. And sometimes it's just helping people, and like you're saying, kind of opening the doors, asking questions for them to arrive there on their
Yeah.
own,
Oh, yeah.
honoring that higher self and that place they're headed, and also that you also mentioned not letting other people sway you, because even like your own experience and saying how you're like when your first time having that vision and having to go to that girl, um and just going for it anyway and not knowing how she was going to react, so just remembering, and for all of us to remember, that what we do is not up doesn't matter to anybody else. It's
Right.
not for anybody else. We have to honor ourselves and what we're meant to be doing, and to do it anyway, because you're meant to be, you're going to connect with the people you're meant to connect with.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And I always tell my kids, character is something that no one can take from you. And that's like huge to me. If I ever found out like one of my kids were like making fun of someone, they know that that's like a very sensitive subject to me. Character is very important. So like your word, your loyalty, very important things. And if you don't have those in your toolbox, it's going to be difficult.
Well, and I think that's really important for ourselves to hear and for, our children, because you don't want to be the reason someone has a negative story about themselves. You
Yeah.
don't want to be the reason people have self-doubt and don't feel worthy. No one wants to be the root of that story for someone else. And I think that's really important for us to instill, not just in our kids, but in ourselves. We need to remind ourselves sometimes we think we might be joking, and it cuts a little bit deeper than we intended. And me as a sarcastic person, that's been an ever evolving. We live in New England. People speak sarcasm, and it's always been a weaponized mechanism for me. And, that's definitely evolved for me in the last 5 years, going, it doesn't really serve anyone to be that way. And especially not myself. I'm just trying to protect myself. So, Melissa, as we wrap this up, I would like for you to share with our listeners, because we have listeners that are local and not, but how could they connect with you and work with you in the future?
I'm at Uplifting Connections in Bridgewater, and you can just call and make an appointment. And that would be whether you feel that you want to do kind of like an overall, me just checking over your energy field, and if there's anything that you're struggling with, whether it's, sleep or anxiety, or you just really don't know, we'll just do like a general, checking your energy. So I would say like a healing session. And if there's someone you want to connect with on the other side, then it would be like a mediumship reading.
And where can they find you on social, Melissa?
Soul's Destiny. And I have,
Solstice.
yep. And it's, so you can also find me Melissa Gouveia Felix on Facebook. And then my business page is off of that, Soul's Destiny.
Awesome. We'll make sure to put that in the notes for our listeners so they can find you. And I have to say, I am a person that has visited your location of Uplifted Connections. If you can remind me of the owners' names.
John and Kelly.
John and Kelly, it is an amazing space. At first, you might go in and feel a little overwhelmed, like, what are all the things in this space? But John and Kelly have purposely chose the things that they've placed in their stores for a reason. And they offer additional services, and they include people like Melissa in there. They make an entire community just in their one store. And I think if you're looking for something, you're searching for something, you're feeling a little alone, you're not sure where to start your self-love journey, it's definitely a nice spot to stop by if you are in, the South Coast area of Massachusetts.
And they're very holistic, and they're very like-minded with me. We really try to get to the root cause instead of just like, medication,
Right.
do root, because it's always the root is the problem, right?
Awesome.
Say thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like it opened my mind to a whole new realm of possibilities. And I've worked with some people on Reiki before, but very, very small amounts. And so to hear you and what you're doing with the medium aspect as well is really fascinating. So
Yeah.
Next time I'm up north, I'm going to have to stop there.
Yeah. I think at the heart of this conversation, for anyone listening, no matter your age, you don't know everything. there is always something else that you can learn. I'm sure I learned a lot, opened my mind to things. It doesn't mean I'm accepting of it, but I'm open to learning about it. And if you have the belief in it, then it exists regardless. So thank you, Melissa. We are so excited that we got to chat with you today. I will absolutely be seeing you again in person, and I will share with everyone. But if you want to find Melissa, you can find her at Uplifting Connections in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Once again, we're so glad to have you here on an episode. And if you want to join the community and the conversation, follow us on Instagram at Happy Healthy Skeptical.